for some more creepypasta. So today we're going to be reading The Horrors of the Backrooms, Part 2. This is a 3-part series, and yeah, I'll just get right into it. It's been around 3 months since my whole incident with The Expanse. I had been seeing my new therapist, Tiffany, for pretty much that entire length of time. She was on the younger side and only really been working in the field for a few years, but she seemed to know what she was doing and actually listened to me. I told her a lot of stuff and experiences in my life and up to that point, but I was mostly veered away from the topic of The Expanse. I wasn't trying to get myself committed. I don't really know how the whole thing works. It just feels like the more I went into it, the better chance I would have of her thinking I was legitimately insane. Hyperbole aside, though, if I just thought it would be better for the both of us if I didn't bring it up much. That is, until one day she insisted that I talk about it. She wasn't authoritative necessarily, but said everything she could to guarantee that I would feel okay was going into detail about it. After all, me trying to tell others about it is why I'm here in the first place. Alex, you can trust me. I'm here to help you, not judge you. If I was, then I wouldn't be in this chair, she said softly, leaning forward in a chair and looking at me with almost a maternal instinct. I won't force you to talk about anything, but I promise you don't have to feel like a prisoner in your own mind. I bet I can relate a lot more than you might think. I perked up upon hearing that last sentence, my eyes shifting in her direction with a look of intrigue and curiosity. She returned the eye contact before delivering a slight smirk confirming her implication. You're not serious, I accused. Listen, I get you want to help me, but you don't have to lie to me. This isn't necessarily the most professional of me, and I really shouldn't say this, but that place you're talking about, it's not as insane as you might think. I believe your story, every word of it, she continues, suddenly stopping her hand gestures as she waits for my response. I really don't appreciate you making a joke at my experience, I snarled. You're supposed to be helping me. You're supposed to be different than all the other people who won't listen and ridicule me. I'm nothing but a punchline to everyone, even before any of this happened. After my little fit, I then got up out of my chair and began to walk to the door, only to be stopped once she announced something that made my heartbeat nearly cease upon hearing it. The thing with the legs, came her calm assertion. I turned, looking over to her with wide eyes and mouth slightly ajar. I never told her about the creature, not once. In fact, I hadn't told anyone about it, let alone any of its anatomical features. So I stood there, looking like a complete moron while she got out of her chair and approached me. Taking a quick glance to her left at a long curtain on the side of the room with no windows, then directly back at me. It tried to kill you, didn't it? She inquired rhetorically. It tried to kill me, too. Still, I stood there stunned, not even knowing how to form a words for a response. Alex, you gotta believe me. I'm sorry if you thought I was trying to discredit you. That wasn't my intention. But I know what you're talking about, and I know you're not the only person who's gone through this. Now will you please sit and finish our session? I don't want you leaving this room upset. She kept her gaze locked hard on me, and I took a deep breath, internally kicking myself for not keeping my cool when I had always been a person who prided myself on just doing that. So with a bit of hesitance, I turned and headed back over to the chair, sitting down and covered my hands together as I waited her to continue speaking. How'd you get in? How did you get there? She asked, a sympathetic undertone present in her voice. It took me nearly a full minute to answer despite knowing precisely what I wanted to say, but Tiffany's body language gave me no doubt that she was entirely prepared to listen. A wall? I croaked out. This wall in my basement, it was like it wasn't even there. Like things could just go through it. It was so weird, and I've only seen things like that in video games. This didn't seem to shock her, not in the slightest, and she only nodded slightly while staying silent, allowing me to elaborate. My parents wouldn't listen to me. I tried telling them about it, but they didn't want to hear it. All I know is I wanted some proof, so I could show someone at least. Show someone who would know something about it, or at least someone who would believe me. And how did you feel when you were in there? She asked, prompting me to take another several seconds of silence as I thought about my reply. I really don't know how to explain it. It's not a feeling you can describe. I don't think anyone's felt it besides you. Is there any chance you could tell me about what you saw on the walls? I solicited only a prompt look of hesitation from Tiffany. This is about you, Alex, not me. I'm here to hear your story, not to tell you mine, she rebuked, cupping her hands together. I know you are, but I want to hear yours. Maybe it'll help me be able to find some closure with mine. I fired back, more insistent than previously. I just want to know there's someone else out there who understands. Tiffany exhales, looking both to left and right, only to return her gaze back over to me and silence swallows the room. I knew that in the back of on her mind she didn't want to tell me that despite her training and education, she was still a human at the end of the day. Screw protocol, screw procedures, screw all of it. Just please, please tell me, I beg, leaning forward in anticipation. Tiffany keeps eye contact with me, still appearing unsure about her next move. I widened my eyes and let her know just how desperate I was to hear her experience. Okay, she says, sighs, still hesitant. I was 10. It was my birthday, and my mom had invited several of my friends over to the house to celebrate. My dad had taken me out to the shed in our backyard so he could grab some tools to finish working on my birthday present. He refused to tell me what it was until it was finished. You see, my dad was never really let me into the shed very much, not unless I was close with him. Said he didn't want me messing with grown-up stuff in there, stuff that could hurt me. She paused, allowing me to interject with a question. What was your dad's job? I inquired, surprisingly prompting her to smile. He was a carpenter. He was always very good with his hands. Tiffany trails off, an expression of guilt creeping onto her face. Alex, are you sure you want me to do this? It just doesn't feel right. Yes, I need this. Okay, well, we went into the shed, and it was a very small shed. Could barely fit 3 people inside there at once. And yet there was a door on the opposite end of the entrance, and it looked like it would lead you somewhere in the back of the shed, but there wasn't any more physical structure behind it to give the door a real purpose for being there. It was about as pointless as a window on the floor. Dad grabbed some of his tools, and I just kept staring right at that door the whole time. I had seen it a couple times before on this particular occasion. I just really wanted to know why it was there, so I asked him. He told me he was going to add on to the shed and that he was going to build the door ahead of time. Of course, me being 10 with not much comprehension of how carpentry works, I took that as an answer as face value. Yet there was also a part of me that felt like he wasn't telling the whole truth, and after the party was over that night, I had gone to bed, but I couldn't sleep. I lied awake all night thinking about that door. I don't know why, even at the time, I knew it was an odd thing to focus on. Nonetheless, it didn't leave my mind. I tossed and turned, and I had a long day with a lot going on, and yet I was wide awake, and it was all because of that damn door. There were a few brief moments of silence as Tiffany turned to look at the curtain on the side of the room again, caused me to do the same as she started speaking once again. At this point, it got too much. I was just too curious about something so mundane. Like I said, I don't know why, but I got out of bed, grabbed my flashlight, and made my way out to the shed. I made sure not to wake up my dad, and not even sure how long I would have gotten grounded if I ended up getting caught. I made it to the shed regardless, and walked over to the door. And with the only other sound in the immediate area being crickets, I was able to hear something on the other side of it, which logically should have just been more than just crickets, but it wasn't. Instead, it sounded like an electric buzzing, if that even makes any sense, like buzzing of ceiling lights. Even at that age, I knew something wasn't right. I recognized the sound from the lights in my school all the time, and I knew there was no reason for me to be hearing it coming from there. So I let my curiosity get the best of me, as a lot of kids do, so I opened that damn door, and God, I wanted to kick myself for even saying it now, but I opened the door, and there it was, the expanse. I remember just like how you described its ugly yellow walls, a damp old-looking carpet, and the buzzing. The buzzing. It was twice as loud now that I'd opened the door. I don't know what to think. I knew that I was scared, but part of me was anyway. But I was mainly in shock. This wasn't possible. I'd only ever seen things like this happen in cartoons and movies I watched. So I told myself I wouldn't go far, and that I would only take a few steps inside just to see what the place was like, and to make sure it wasn't just my imagination and that I wasn't dreaming. At first, I was honored. What I told myself, I only took 3 steps inside before staring at the empty hallway in front of me. The fluorescent lights flickering above only helped to unease me, but my curiosity was overpowering my gut feeling, and the feeling something was wrong, and not just what I could see. I finally began listening to my instincts at that point because it wasn't long before I decided it was really time to go, and I had already overstayed my welcome. When I turned around to go back the way I came, I saw nothing. Just a flat, ugly yellow wall like the rest of them. Any sign of a door being there up and vanished. I went to the wall and pushed on it with all my weight and threw myself against it over and over, thinking I'd get some sort of different outcome. But no, I was just a scared little girl trapped in a place I knew nothing about. I banged on the wall and yelled as loud as I could for my parents, and it wasn't long before I started to cry in a desperate panic. All I did was stand there, continuously throwing my fists on the wall over and over, begging for my parents to come and save me from this place. And it wasn't long before something heard me, something that I knew I was invading its territory. I heard it screech when it was coming for me. It was awful. I don't think I've ever heard anything more horrific than the sound the thing made. It was like someone had put a screaming baby on a distorted megaphone. So I did the one thing that I could do at the time, and I ran. I ran as fast as I could to the right because the screeching was coming from the left. It felt like, I don't know, like I wasn't even moving. I just passed yellow wall after yellow wall, and I knew in the back of my mind I was going somewhere, but the rest of me felt deceived. It looked endless and maddening, and eventually I came to stop, feeling like I had put enough distance between myself and whatever it was that was pursuing me. What I felt wasn't just fear. This wasn't looking down a dark flight of stairs or a creepy basement or even seeing a spider in your room. No, this wasn't existential on another level I can't put into concrete wording. I still hadn't seen the thing, not up until that point, so I went and hid behind a wall, placed my back against it softly, and I couldn't even tell if I had actually made contact with it. It was around 10 seconds when I was able to work the way up to Courage's peak, my head over the edge of the wall. I was shaking, holding in sniffles, had silent tears going down my face, and I didn't dare make a sound I couldn't afford to. At first, there was nothing. It kind of looked like something out of those old playhouses from the 2000s, just cold and empty, no life present at all, and it was uncanny. Tiffany pauses, inhaling and shifting her gaze towards this curtain once more, prompting me to finally point it out. What was going on with that? I asked as politely as I could. Oh, nothing important, just more than a wall, she laughed off dismissively. For the first time since she started telling her story, I felt a bit uncomfortable, but I was mainly chalked it up to her being invested in what she was saying, so I just went back to listening. And there I was, staring down the yellow void until I heard it screech again as it rounds the corner all the way down the hall and it spots me peeking. I knew it saw me because we both froze for a second. It was like it wanted me to know that it knew I was there and that my fate was sealed. And those legs, God, those legs. They all moved in this grotesquely perfect unison and it started running towards me. So I turned and bolted, hugging the wall to my left, what was a dead end. Just my luck. Oh, did I mention I don't like spiders, or really anything with more than 4 legs for a matter? So it wasn't exactly on my bucket list to encounter a man-sized mutated centipede. I didn't think my little legs could carry me so far and so fast, and everything around me was a blur, like I was on a high-speed rail train or something. But it still wasn't enough. That thing was hot on my trail, hot on my tail, and then there was a small part of me that knew I couldn't outrun it. I pulled away from the wall to my left and took some turns to try and confuse it, but it knew what I was doing, probably because everyone who ran from it before tried the same thing and failed. God have mercy on them. I knew it was closing in on me when its footsteps got louder. Death was practically knocking at my door. I still remember how it sounded when it rained, and it makes my skin crawl to these days. The yellow walls, the hum, buzz of lights, the almost carpet. It made that thing much worse, knowing I was probably going to die young in such an alien environment. I wasn't getting out, not alive anyway, or so I thought, she trailed off. You said the walls in your basement was how you entered it, right? The expanse, she inquires, catching me off guard with a sudden question. Yes, I trailed off, unsure of what to say next. Why didn't you try to show it to anyone? My parents, they built a wall panels in front of it, told me that they were tired of my ghost stories and my obsession with the damn wall, so they said they'd get it out of my sight and out of my mind. I know they think there's something wrong with it, kind of like how your dad did, but they don't want me messing with things they don't understand, or they just don't want our house to become a government research site, which both seem just as likely. I wish they could at least acknowledge my story as true. Their own son went to this horrific place, survived being attacked by a dangerous monster, and they just pretended like I'm crazy, that I'm just so desperate for attention. I hate it, and I almost hate them for it. But they've raised me and fed me and gave me shelter. Maybe one day they'll come to their senses. Tiffany's stares became a bit more cold, as if I told her what I ate for breakfast that morning. I hadn't seen her look at me like that before now, and I didn't like it. It was unsettling, especially considering the gravity and context of what I just said. Why don't you finish telling me about your experience? We're kind of getting off topic, don't you think? I interject, hoping that she would agree. Right, she began, bringing me a bit of relief. It's about as straightforward as a situation like that could be. I was running from something I truly couldn't escape in a place I was never meant to be. Eventually, after going for so long, my lungs began to give out, and I simply couldn't muster the strength or energy to run anymore, even though I knew I had no choice. And I think that was the worst part of it, knowing that I couldn't do even the bare minimum of running away to save myself. Sure as hell wasn't going to try and fight that thing. Soon enough, it came to a dead end, boxed in on the walls of either side of me and the creature behind me. I somehow mustered up the courage to turn around as it closed in. I could have sworn it had even tried to smile at me before it prepared to kill me. Like it knew it was gonna make me suffer and that it was gonna take pleasure in the agony of my slow, painful death. But something in me snapped, and I honestly shocked myself when this sudden shouting roar emerged from within me, and I directed it right at the creature. I thought it would be completely pointless, but to my surprise, it hesitated, like it was caught off guard by a violent outburst of what it saw as prey. Leave me alone! Leave me alone, you stupid, ugly monster! I shouted while flailing my arms, and I noticed that I had been taken aback, and I wanted to keep it that way. You're a stupid, weird, ugly monster! I continued screaming, and baring my teeth to make myself look less docile. It wasn't long before the beast had realized who was really in control, so it began crawling forward again, despite me throwing my various insults at it. I was desperate, saying every nasty thing I could think of as it was close in distance. But like I said, my dominance was short-lived, and I wasn't in control any longer. So I tried something else. I proposed a deal to it. Tiffany then pauses, not even making a sound, as she looked at the floor with mannerisms that almost resembled guilt. What did you offer it? I grilled demandingly. That's not important, but what is that it spoke to me. Told me it was hungry, in this gross, hoarse, and nightmarish voice, like an elderly smoker who had his throat filled with thick syrup. I didn't even know that something that alien could even possess the ability to speak in the first place. Its voice really contrasts all those horrible screeches it makes, I won't tell you that. But I eventually made it out, found a wall that was darker than the rest, and fell right through. And it right back up in, whoa, wait, what did you offer it? I said, less than patient present in my tone. And don't say it's not important. I want to know why it let you live. But Tiffany doesn't respond out loud. Instead, she goes looking at that freaking curtain again, giving it an intriguing stare before standing up out of her chair and moving forward to it. That's when I decided it was time to leave. Okay, I think this session is over. I pronounced as firmly as I could at the time, only for her entire demeanor to shift once the words left my mouth. I stood up, attempting to go over and grab my cell phone from her table. Sit! She snarled, giving me a look that she said she was not in the mood to argue. Tell me what you offered it! I erupted, my voice echoing off the walls. She didn't respond yet again, prompting me to lunge at the door, and I got my hand on the knob again and fumbled turning it. So I threw it on there again, and only to be stopped mid-turn by the sound of clicking coming from behind me. I already concluded the obvious. Stop and turn around slowly. Don't make this any harder than it needs to be, she growled, presumably waving a gun she had pointing in the back of my skull. You know I'd rather die than get sent back there, I reboot. Oh, but it won't be that simple. I'll just put a bullet in each of your knees and then throw you in there, so your fate is up to you. Do you want to slide slow and painfully or have a chance of running away for a while? Put my hands up and slowly turn around, and right there was a sight of Tiffany standing next to the curtain with a Glock in her right hand pointed directly at me. Good, she muttered just before reaching her free hand to grab the edge of the curtain and yanked it to the side. And behind said curtain was a door. Just a simple, dark red door, like one you'd see in someone's home. That alone isn't usually very sinister, but in this context, it was beyond bone-chilling. I knew that there was on the other side of it, and I didn't have much longer before I ended up there, back in the expanse. Come here, Tiffany demanded, using her gun to point to the door. With no choice, I did what I was told and marched over to her, stopping just a meter in front of the door, my hand still in the air. I'm hungry. It's hungry. I'm sorry, Alex, but it's hungry, she said, all the sympathy exiting her tone. When I saw your story, I knew I needed to find you. So you can kill me to continue to save your own skin? How do you know the creature could even make it out of the expanse? What do you have to fear? If it's nothing but an empty threat when you're out here. Oh, it can, she said. You see, you got lucky. You fell into a public place where it didn't want to reveal itself by continuing to pursue you. But most people, even those who fall back into reality, aren't so lucky. How would it even know where you are when you're not in the expanse? You don't have to bend this thing's will, I promise you. But instead of rebutting, she simply waves the gun towards the door, signaling for me to open it and step through. I can't take the risk. I need to look out for myself and people who never meant to discover the expanse. And we're both paying the price for treading somewhere we don't belong. Plus, if I don't hold up my end of the bargain, I'm not the only one in danger. Far from it. And this goes beyond just you and me. Seems like you're getting a bit of slack compared to me, I barked back. Hurry up and stop stalling, Tiffany snapped. There's no need to do this. There's got to be another way. I bet you haven't even tried to use that gun on it once, have you? I said go, Alex, she commanded violently, now moving closer and placing the barrel inches away from my skull. I turned slowly, giving her one last look, a look that told her I was desperate for her to come into her senses. All I wanted was for her to realize the madness of what she was doing and that there was a way out. But alas, I was hoping for an outcome that was impossible at that point. So I took a deep breath and looked ahead and lifted my hand up, guiding to the doorknob. You're gonna get what's coming to you, I said, maintaining my forward gaze despite my defeated tone. I then slowly pulled back and the door creaking as it inched across the distance of the floor. My eyes widened as I saw it, the place I thought I'd never see again. All my fight or flight instincts went into high alert as soon as I heard the buzzing of the fluorescent lights. Everything that happened came right back to me in a way that made me feel like I was never truly left the expanse. It was like getting greeted from an old personal hell, welcome me back home. I took my first couple steps forward and the all too familiar but subtle squelch of the moist carpet manifesting as my foot made contact. I felt goosebumps form around my arms and legs. The expanse was a bit cooler than what I had previously remembered. It's for the greater good, came Tiffany from behind. I don't turn around, not at first, but once I hear a heavy slam, I take a look back, see nothing but more of the ugly yellow wallpaper. It was just like Tiffany's experience if she was even telling the truth. The door that leads in does not lead out. But just like that, I was right back in the place I dreaded the most. I wouldn't make the same mistakes as I did last time. The first thing I wanted to do was begin searching for a wall that I could fall through in order to get out of here. But I also wanted to pinpoint wherever the creature might have been that I could take steps to avoid it. I needed to keep quiet and not panic like I did the first time around. And if I was careful enough, I knew I might just survive long enough to make it out of here once more. I then started walking into a crouched formation, turning right and heading down a corridor that led to a dead end, only to turn and take another left once reaching the end and immediately feeling off-put by a sight I had laid eyes upon. At the end of the hall was what looked like to be a four-way intersection of rooms, which by itself was nothing new. I had seen things like this like the first time I was here. However, there was a strange bright light being emitted from somewhere in the opening of the hallway on the right. I kept quiet and glanced around me, looking for any signs of the creature's presence as I considered moving to investigate whatever was causing the disproportionate light effect, and in that moment I discovered nothing. However, I did hear something that completely threw me off. First, it was a sudden slam, as if a heavy door had been opened and closed in a quick succession. Then the same slam was followed by the sound of footsteps and human voices, both male and female. I turned back and hugged the wall to my right for cover and get down as low as I can, getting all the way up and where it ended and laying on my stomach while peeking over to see whoever these people were. Just in front of the now invisible door were three individuals, all of which looked like I had just walked straight out of an episode of some shadowy government conspiracy TV show. There were two women and one man, and the three were dressed near head to toe in black, with all sorts of body armor and gear to go with it. Each of them held a rifle in their hands and with a pistol on their utility belts, along with various other non-firearm weapons like grenades and knives. The man then puts a hand near his left ear, fidgeting with what appeared to be some sort of earpiece for communication, becoming visibly frustrated, possibly beginning to struggle to function properly. Believe me, I wanted more than to run up and tell them everything, and tell them to help me find a way out of this godforsaken place, and show them the horrors that these walls hold, and was responsible for putting me in here. But I don't think they were here to help, considering the fact that one of them had Tiffany's Glock strapped to their side, with a bit of blood sitting on the left of the barrel. She was nowhere to be found, and I pondered as to whether or not she was dead or incapacitated, but it wasn't long before I got my answer. The body's getting picked up and taken to Site 7. The director of operations said so, came the man, his voice softened in a low pitch. Why not take it back to Site 12? They can feed her to that blue freak they got locked up in there. He repeats to the woman in a sarcastic tone. He's got a talent for killing. I'll give him that, the other woman chimes in. But man, West wasn't kind to him in any looks department. I bet you never seen him fight, the man jokes, smirking as he crutches his rifle. Well, the woman opens her mouth to form a reply, only to be cut off by a blood-curdling, ear-shattering screech coming from somewhere to the left of us. The three of them immediately snapped the tension and turned their weapons and raised their weapons ready for a fight. The creature, it knew we were here, and it was coming. The man quickly lifts its hands to his ear again and resting two fingers along it before saying, This is Agent Crane with Team X5-2. We're at the location of the witness has been terminated and pinged for pickup and disposal. May not be encrypted activity present as well. Should we keep moving? The three agents also did attention as they received the response. One that I myself was too far to hear coming from the communication piece, I arrived at the conclusion that it was now my time to leave. So I got to my feet as quietly as possible, still hugging the wall, and slowly backed away. I turned to refocus my attention to the corridor, peering down the intersection and settling my sights to the bright opening to the right. I kept myself in a crouched position as I hastily made my way towards it, and the horrid screech of the creature once again echoing through the halls of the expanse. Down here! One of the two women shouted, immediately making my heart sink as I had hoped and prayed they weren't referring to the hall that I was currently occupying. But of course, my hopes and wants meant nothing here. I immediately picked up my speed, which was nothing to comparison to how quickly I began moving after hearing one of those female agents shout in my direction from the end of the hall behind me. Hey, get back here! I, of course, had no intentions of obeying her demand. Instead, I broke into a full-on sprint, not even taking a moment to waste trying to convince them of my situation. I made a mad dash for the intersection as a woman began to open fire. Several bullets whipped by and missed me by mere inches, only causing my adrenaline to skyrocket and make me pump my legs by like never before. After what felt like an eternity, I finally managed the end. I made a sudden, hard right turn. The woman had stopped firing at me, but cried out in a fury of both horror and rage. Gunfire then erupted through the walls as I heard the creature's dozens of footsteps as it closed in on the three agents. What is that? The man shouted, just before letting out an agonizing cry. I didn't dare look back, but all this I know the thing wasn't likely to go his way in the midst of encouraging the beast up close. Their screams were haunting, and that coupled with the gunfire and the screeching and the creature in the situation all more horrible. The sounds of flesh tearing didn't help, but at this point I couldn't tell who was killing who. It was only when I was more than a couple hundred feet away and my heartbeat slowed to a mere reasonable speed had I realized that my surroundings changed significantly. Instead of a soft thumping and squelching of the moist carpet, my feet hitting a solid and dry tile, I slowed myself and looked down, only to now see a bright white tiled floor. It was pretty much what you'd find in your average public school building, and speaking of, when I glanced ahead of me, the hallways were no longer yellow. Instead, the walls to my immediately left and right consisted of tall blue lockers. Above those was a simple white painting slant wall that ran up to an equally boring flat tiled ceiling, and there was a gap in the lockers to the left wall, around 30 feet in front of me, so I went towards it, only to discover that the said gap was actually a door. You think by now had my fill on anything to do with those, and the door itself was made from a light, polished wood with tall, vertically thin windows running up it in the middle. Peered into the glass and laid eyes upon a classroom, and one that looked abandoned. Had I made it out? Had I escaped the expanse in second time by some sheer dumb luck? No, because I looked back behind me and saw the way the yellow walls slowly fade into this new structure. The cutoff was sudden and easy to distinguish. Dozens of feet of yellow wallpaper suddenly became a solid white and stopping right where the blue lockers began. It was obvious that this was a school, or at least an imitation of one, but it wasn't. I wasn't back in reality. I was still in the expanse, but obviously this was some sort of different layer or section. Regardless, I don't know who actually left the encounter alive between those agents and the creature. I couldn't hear anything anymore with the distance I put between all of them and myself. But I knew whoever survived would come looking for me, and I wanted nothing to do with either. I didn't want to keep standing out in the middle of the hallway and leave myself as an easy target. Part of me was forgetting the creature might not be the only one in here, and the gunfire going on earlier didn't help. So I put my hand on the doorknob and turned it. To my surprise, the door swung open with a slight creak. I stepped in and shut it behind me, and I didn't see any kind of lock though. So instead, I went up and pushed a couple of students' desks up against it, hoping that it would provide me just a bit more peace of mind. He scared the shit out of me, Bean. While I could tell this place was abandoned, most of the supplies, actual materials still look mostly intact, save the dust and little bits of moisture. Over on what I assumed to be a teacher's desk was a black-covered notebook, and the mug filled with pens and pencils next to it. I approached it only when to stop dead in my tracks by the sound of a sudden movement taking place just outside the door to the classroom. My heart froze, and I kept still. This movement wasn't a consistent, abundant pitter-patter like the creature. It was far too heavy to be human footsteps, so it had to be something I had yet to encounter. Once the initial terror had passed over me, I immediately dropped low and maneuvered my way underneath the teacher's desk, letting my back rest against a thick metallic tower of drawers that doubled as a support leg. I was fully hidden, and I knew whatever it was wouldn't be able to see me, and yet it didn't ease my nerves in the slightest. But how could it? Especially when I couldn't pick up on the faint yet potent sound of its heavy breaths coming through the door. It wasn't looking through the window and the door, waiting for the slightest noise or hint of movement to occur. I had no idea what this thing even looked like, and I didn't want to. I kept holding my breath despite not needing to, and every second felt like an eternity. I got to the point where I thought my heart would explode. But then I heard its monstrous footsteps once more as its heavy breath faded away, allowing me some emotional relief as I finally exhaled, and it was losing interest after failing to pick up on my presence. I slowly peeked my head around to the desk and glanced over at the window of the door, only to see whatever it was no longer there. I still didn't want to leave the room, not for a while, but I knew I had to eventually. I slowly slid out from underneath the desk and stood up, grabbing both a pen and notebook and placed it on the top before returning underneath the desk. I was going to write all this down. I need to reach someone somewhere, and I need to continue getting my story out there. If you don't hear from me again, and I guess that means I didn't make it, but this needs to be exposed and the world needs to know. Be careful where you step, remain cautious of where you go, because there are fates that are a whole lot worse than death, and falling into the expanse is one of them. That would be so fucking creepy. I can't even imagine what. I honestly think I might kill myself if that ever happened to me. Like, I can't process that. That would be so fucking weird. It is, however, giving me another story idea, so that's fucking interesting. Anyways, yeah, hopefully you enjoyed this one. I'm sorry, I have a hard time reading. Sometimes the words just get jumbled because I read too fast. Anyways, if you're new to my channel, be sure to hit the subscribe button, give me a thumbs up, and hit the bell so you notified when videos, which is daily. I love you guys, and I'll see you guys later.